What's up, Compete Training Academy family? Welcome to the Compete Mentality Podcast. The mission of the Compete Mentality Podcast is to motivate, educate, and inspire others to compete. No matter what area of life you're in, we are all called to compete. And our definition at CTA of competing is doing what God is calling you to do, even when it's hard. This episode of the Compete Mentality Podcast is sponsored by the Lewis Jackson and Jordan Delks Basketball School. Be looking for details coming in April on our social media avenues. It is now my absolute pleasure to introduce former Purdue basketball legend and current assistant coach at Mercer University, my guy, DJ Byrd. Byrd, thanks for joining us today, man.
Hey, man, that's quite the intro. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, DJ and I were kind of catching up before, and I was just talking about how this is a special one for me. Both of our families are from Montgomery County, Indiana, and so we kind of shout out to Montgomery County, Indiana. I'm up in Marion, Indiana. DJ's down at Mercer University in Macon, Georgia. So shout out to Montgomery County. But DJ,
Absolutely.
We'll kind of just dive right on in to this podcast, and we start this podcast off a lot just because Cordy and I are big foodies. Okay, so obviously we're trainers, and we really enjoy holding people accountable on the court, off the court, and their nutrition. But man, we love trying new places to eat. And I want to hear down in Mercer, down in Macon, what's your go-to restaurant right now, and describe what you're going to order.
Okay. Well, right here on campus, Mercer's got a pretty nice campus. It's got a small little area where it has a few restaurants, and then they're big supporters of the university. But there's one Mexican restaurant called Margaritas, and they have a whole menu of tacos, all different kinds of tacos, so you really can't go wrong. But lately it's been the pork tacos, the carnitas tacos. Man, those are really good. I got to ease up on them. They're really good. But the whole environment there, it's got a nice little outdoor spot, and Mexican food is delicious. So I definitely say that's where I'm at the moment.
Man, you cannot go wrong with that. I got notes out here, a Word document. I'm typing that out. When I come visit you and Luke, Courtney and I will hit that up for sure.
Definitely. That's the place. That's where I took my parents. It's where all visitors, we go to Margarita first. It's kind of where it's what we do. So
I love it.
There.
Yep. I love it. DJ, you were just known for how hard you played the game and are truly a Boilermaker legend just because of your hustle. And you won the Mr. Hustle Award at Purdue. And so I want to, with being an expert in the game of basketball for your hustle, talk to us about your top 5 Mr. Hustles in Purdue history. So I'm a huge Boilermaker fan, obviously, being a manager for Coach Painter. I'm a third generation Boilermaker. My family bleeds black and gold. I love talking the history of Purdue basketball. So out of all the players in Purdue basketball, I want to hear from Mr. Hustle himself, your top.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take that. Well, there's been a lot of them, but I think the first a lot can remember is Brian Cardinal, the custodian. I mean, absolutely. The guy wore knee pads, for God's sake. He was ready to go.
Right.
He was ready to get after it.
Yeah.
Definitely Brian Cardinal. A dude that I played with, you guys all know, Chris Kramer. Just in terms of their will to compete, and the fact that there were days in practice where Chris Kramer would not let certain guys dribble anywhere, or you would just have the ball and then you wouldn't have the ball anymore.
Right.
But he showed that obviously on the court too, and he was good for me in that, just being a freshman, having him as a senior and kind of set the tone and to see what it was like to compete at that level and to play as hard as he did for as long as he did, both during practices and games. But just that mentality, though, that kind of, when I was a freshman coming into it, it was like, that's the one thing I took notice of.
For sure.
And I was like, well, if I can't do any of this other stuff, I can do that, or at least can try to do that. And that's kind of, I think, kind of the way my role kind of changed and stayed that course. Another one during the Cardinal era, I guess, would be Kenny Lowe. I mean, the guy was 2-time Defensive Player of the Year.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
a lot of people forget that. I think like he was, he would guard some people and compete. You know, the type of mentality you have to be that position and to do it for 2 years straight just kind of shows, man, that's not easy to do. Like, that's very special. And so, I mean, that's a few of them. Another one, when I was a GA, obviously Grady Eifert kind of fits that mold as well.
Yep.
Just doing all the little things. I remember we played at Nebraska, and if you remember that, he had an offensive rebound, kind of turnaround tip in, I think was close to the end of the game there. And obviously he hit some big shots and earned a scholarship and did a lot of those things. But I think he kind of exemplifies what it means to be a Mr. Hustle.
No doubt. No doubt.
And he obviously did a lot for that program. I mean, helped take the team to the Elite Eight. Like that was two of the best years, and kind of formed. I learned a lot from Coach Painter and the staff during that run, during those 2 years, about what type of coach that I wanted to try to be. And I'm still doing that today. And coaching our guys, like I said, I was just working out one of our seniors here at Mercer, Ross Cummings, who's going to play in the 3-point shootout. So for him, it's like, hey man, you've shot the ball well your whole life. Like this is just another fun little thing to do. And but he feels good about it. I feel good about it. It'd be cool to see him win the 3-point contest. But anyway, those are a few of my Mr. Hustle guys right there.
Man, you can't go wrong with any of those guys. And I think that's what truly, I think I can speak on behalf of the fan base at Purdue. Like that's just the type of players. That's what we expect is like, if you go out, it doesn't matter. Like I remember Coach Painter always saying like, you can't find your identity in your jumper. You can't find your identity in your jumper. But if you can bring it every day and control what you can control and just play hard, man, you're going to be adored by Mackey, and you're going to be adored by the Purdue fans. And those guys are fantastic. And DJ, you've got an awesome background. I'd love to just talk about that and just kind of give our audience just kind of how you got to where you are today.
Okay. I'll keep it short for you then. No, for me, obviously, like you said, we grew up in Montgomery County, and my mom went to North Montgomery. My dad went to Southmont. And so, I mean, starting young, I played basketball all the way, started out in my grandpa's barn and then out kind of the whole Indiana story. But it really kind of was like my parents lived right by New Richmond where the movie Hoosiers was filmed. So it kind of had that theme as a kid growing up, like wanted to play basketball. But fast forward after my playing days at Purdue, I went over and played in Germany for a season. Got to experience that life as a professional basketball player in a different country. And not that I didn't like it. It was just kind of like, well, I don't know where I see myself going. Do I want to go to another country? Do I want to go to another league? Or at the time, my sister was playing college basketball at IUPUI. My cousin was playing college basketball at Bethel College up in Mishawaka, Indiana. And so for me, it was like, well, I don't really want to miss that. So I came back and wanted to be around that and got into training and coaching players, kind of like you did. And from there, I was trying to figure out if I wanted to keep playing basketball, if I wanted to get into coaching. So I tried to do some different things. Like I went and got my real estate license, and I went and interviewed for a couple different jobs. One in the financial world, and another just kind of branching out to see what it was like and what I could do. And I think in real estate, like I sold a house. But even then I was like, man, I want to get into coaching. So I was able to find a job coaching and teaching at Franklin Community High School, just south of Greenwood, with head coach Brad Dickey, who does a great job down there. And we had a mutual connection, and they were looking for a JV coach. So I was able to go there, help out at the middle school for a year. And then the next year, I actually able to teach at the high school as a special education teacher and still coach the JV and help with the varsity and do all that. So during that time, Franklin Community High School has an incredible environment. I don't know if you've been there, like the house or
it's beautiful.
It's it's fairly new, and you can it has a 4-court field house. And then you could get 3 courts in the main gym. So we hosted a lot of camps and leagues and tournaments, and just always had kids in the gym. And from there, man, I was like, we can really provide a place. It was right off 65. You can provide a place for kids to always be able to come play and always be able to train. And so I kind of started a little bit of it was just the beginnings of like my own kind of AAU program.
Right.
But then things would change, because then I would go on to be a GA and work at the NCAA. So I couldn't work with high school kids that were 7th grade and older because of recruiting stuff and NCAA stuff. So, but during that time, man, we spent so much time in the gym on the weekends and had leagues and tournaments and shoot, we were making nachos and hot dogs and picking up Powerades and coaching our team here, and then running over to the 4th grade team and coaching them. You know, it was really, looking back, it was really cool. And it was fun just to go from game to game like that. And we had referees, make sure we pay the referees, make sure we do this, make sure we do that. And it was really, it was a good environment. We were actually hoping to have a couple more camps and stuff like that before it was right at the end of that second year. I was about to start an online school because I was a special ed teacher because of the teacher shortage in Indiana. So I was able to get a teaching license because of my bachelor's degree, and I had to continue schooling in order to keep that license to be able to keep teaching. And the day I was supposed to enroll, Coach Painter called me. And this is already after, I thought I was going to be a GA at Kansas State with Coach Weber. And weeks before that, Coach Paint was like, congratulations, man. Congratulations. You'll do great at Kansas State with Coach Weber and all that. So I was under the impression, I was like, oh, I think I got it. I think they talked, and I think I'm going to go to Kansas State. So I started talking to Ashley, my now wife and girlfriend at the time. And hey, we might be moving to Manhattan, Kansas. What do you think about that? And she's like, well, I don't know what to think about that. So like we spent a couple of days, and then I ended up calling Coach Weber and got back to him and say, oh yeah, well I think I got a couple of players in line with that. We like to keep that open kind of right before. And I'm like, oh, okay. So at the time I was like, man, I thought I had it because Coach Paint kind of talked about it, but I don't know for sure. So it was wasn't communicated like to where I knew exactly what was going on, and I didn't want to force it. So I was like, I'll just kind of let it happen. And it was that day that I was supposed to re-enroll in school that Coach Paint called and says, hey, we have a new position here as a graduate assistant. Would you want to come and be a part of it? And it was a great call for me because I wanted to get into college basketball. I wanted to get into coaching at that level. And so obviously very appreciative of that and to be able to experience those 2 seasons of, Purdue basketball and kind of move on from there and have that as part of my background is like, it's pretty awesome. And it kind of sets the tone for how I want to keep improving as a coach and kind of see the process that those guys who've coached for a long time. I mean, Coach Brantling and Coach Lutz and even Elliot, the director of operations, he's been around a lot of basketball and he can talk basketball like that. And obviously Coach Gary down here. So GA, and then Coach Gary got the head job at Mercer, which was an awesome announcement. And you saw that even from our players during the tournament, they were excited for him. And, he'd been waiting for that for a long time. And so now that's where we're at here. And we've had a couple decent seasons down here at Mercer if you've been able to keep up, but always pushing for more. I mean, we have the resources here at Mercer. We have the facilities, we have the campus and everything. So we just got to keep improving and try to, build on for next season after the COVID year.
Yep. No doubt about it. And man, I love seeing Coach Gary be successful down there and bringing Purdue guys down there like you and just have a little Purdue 2.0 down there. And,
that's kind of what it is. We have more plays though. Coach G doesn't have Coach Paint to say, hey, that's too many plays. So we have a lot of we have a lot of good offensive stuff and so we do a lot of the same stuff and similar stuff like they do at Purdue.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And really the biggest thing I'm sure is you just infusing the culture of what it means to play hard down there. And that's where I want to kind of transition our conversation is like, play hard just gets thrown around all the time. Coaches say, play hard, play hard, play hard. Well, like we got a lot of hoopers, coaches listening to this podcast. Like, just tell us what it means to play hard.
That's a great question. And I've been asked that by a couple of people that I've worked with, the past 5 years, and we have it on the back of our shorts and like, what exactly does play hard mean? And I think it means it's a level of, first of all, pride to compete every day and not give in. That applies to a lot of different situations, both in practice, off the court, in the classroom, but on the court, obviously, playing hard is just being resilient and not letting your exhaustion or not letting a turnover here or not letting things affect your mentality of competing. And I think a lot of that gets cloudy now as certain guys now they're in the transfer portal and anytime they see some adversity, not all the time, but they tend to go a different direction, or they tend to, I don't know, shut down, like this is too much, and there's a lot that can get complicated, but for the main point is to fight through that adversity without a second thought and kind of build your training on that and build the way you shoot and how many times you shoot a day and just kind of that discipline to, no matter what happens, I'm going to be prepared for it. And I think that's what it means to play hard. In my mind, it's not giving in to any of that. Any of the exhaustion is to continue guarding, to continue hitting people on rebounds, being physical without fouling. I saw that on the sheet as well. We'll have to talk about that. Yep. But I think that's my definition of what it means to play hard.
Yeah, that's a fantastic definition. And you played that way. That's why you got the Mr. Hustle award. And I truly believe you can tell a lot about a man by the way he plays the game of basketball. Like, I think you can really tell a lot about a person off the court, the way they're going to be successful in life, the way they're going to fight through adversity, the way they're going to approach life by the way they play the game of basketball. And it's been cool to see that translate the way you played hard into your coaching career. And coaching is not easy, like you said. Like you're in limbo. Kansas State, Purdue. Talk to Ashley. She's like, it's tough. It's tough.
It can be, but you got to enjoy the adventure of it. You got to enjoy the process of it, the people you meet, the people you work with, and that sort of thing. And my wife has been awesome about it. Like she's still able to do her work from here and work here and work from home and do that sort of thing. But she's on board and just trying to keep improving and
for sure.
And both, as a coach, but you want to see your players succeed, and that's why I'm excited for Ross in this 3-point competition. Because he's had a 5-year career and he was injured last year, and so just to give him another opportunity to do something cool and do something to compete again and that sort of thing.
No doubt. And I kind of want to stay on this next question on the topic of playing hard. And I remember Coach Painter used to say all the time in practice, you've got to embrace the physicality of the game. And basketball is a contact sport. And tell us a story about maybe a very physical moment you experienced at Purdue in practice or a game, and just describe that moment to us.
There were a lot of moments. But the way I understand it and the way I teach it, and it depends on the person too. Like, I think like I've always kind of been a little bit bigger growing up. So I've always been thrown into the mix of getting hit and screening hard. And it's never really like physically hurt me. Like mainly if it hurts someone, it's them I'm screening just because I was just a little bigger or whatever. Yeah. But when you have kids that maybe weren't in that position, or they were always kind of skinny, because I noticed a lot of kids, they'll screen with like their hands up, because they've never just been strong enough. So they're always kind of like little things I noticed when I coached at the high school level. Like, why don't they screen with their elbows? Oh, because they don't want to get hit. Right. Like it physically hurts them. Like their ribs are right here and they're getting elbows. So they've kind of just, not intentionally, but they haven't been physical. So embracing the physicality of the game at this level is not giving up post position. And how you do that? Well, you can't hold them with your hands. But that's why we do squats. That's why we do all these power cleans. That's why we do explosive stuff, to be able to be quick enough. Because again, I was an undersized forward, so I was always guarding guys in the post. So I mean, that was my position. So I was quick enough and try to be evasive in post position and guarding. And so being physical, embracing the physicality of the game is doing just that. And it's not using your hands, it's guarding and fronting. It's opening up on a back screen and seeing the ball and not giving up easy plays when the shot goes up, boxing out every time. And just like, that's the physicality of the game without throwing elbows and doing all the stuff that, that you learn at a young age. That's not how you play. Like when I was a freshman in high school and I was getting held because they were told to hold me so that they knew I'd freak out and and foul them. And I was, oh, well, my freshman year in high school, I learned that pretty quick.
Yeah.
Gotta chill out. So I think the physicality of the game part comes from just years of playing it at a high level and understanding how to get an advantage physically by position, or it helps if you're extremely athletic or explosive and can touch the top of the backboard and do some things like that.
Yeah.
But from that definition, that's kind of what it means in my book anyway.
Yeah, no doubt. And I want to talk about a specific practice as we transition. And you and I were texting a little bit about it yesterday, and just a practice that's kind of seared into both of our minds, it sounds like, for the rest of our lives. And let me set the stage here for our audience. We had just hosted IU at Mackey, and this was Zeller, Oladipo, Jordy Holes. I can't remember what they were ranked. Yeah,
they were 1 or 2.
Yeah, they were ranked number 1 or 2 in the nation, and they came in and beat us at Mackey, and that doesn't sit well with us at Purdue. And I'll tell this insider story here. I actually was the visiting team host. So like as a manager, you go sit with the other team. And so I'm sitting there. And I remember I was working all day around Mackey. I actually hadn't eaten anything. I remember grabbing like one of those Gatorade protein bars in the locker room. Like I'm starving. And I took it with me out to the game. And like, as the game's going, like, so I'm wearing a suit. I look like a coach. And I'm like eating this Gatorade bar. And like the paint crew is just like giving it to me that like, holy cow, this guy's, what are you eating, a protein bar? And I'm like, dude, like, quit heckling me. Like, I'm one of you guys, man.
I'm grinding.
I am grinding right now. And but then we lose the game. And so it's my job to sprint back to the locker room before unlock the visiting team locker room. So I go back there, I unlock it. And and Purdue Pete comes out of nowhere. IU's team's coming like to the locker room. Purdue Pete comes out of nowhere and really just starts cussing out Tom Crean and like the team. And Tom like looks at me to do something, and I'm like, man, like I'm a manager. Like I can't tell this guy what to do. So I just kind of got out of there.
Wow.
So yeah, this is a story that's being told on air for the first time. And I go back to the locker room, and it was an intense locker room. I'm not going to repeat everything that was said. That stays in the locker room. But it was an intense locker room, and we didn't have practice scheduled for the next morning. This is a Saturday night, and we did not have practice scheduled for Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
And we had practice the next morning, to say the least. And I'm going to let you take it from here, DJ, to kind of describe what happened in this practice.
Well, as a player, as a coach, you always hear stories about these practices, the ones that you like. In my freshman year, it was when we lost 3 straight. We lost our 3rd one at Northwestern, and we came back, and it was one of those practices, man, you had to be ready to go. And if you were ready to go and a few of your teammates weren't into it, you tend to get frustrated with the guys that were on your team because you wanted to win, because you didn't want to run to the top of Mackey 100 times or do something crazy like that. So, I mean, we had practice the next day, and like I said, it's almost like, hey, if I can do this, you can do this. And it was kind of a challenge to all the players on our team. How am I winning these sprints and you're not even making them? And unless you're not on board. And so like for us, it was like a good moment for our team to kind of understand, hey, this is the level that we need to play at to compete with a team like that. And the players that we had. And again, Indiana had some good players too. but it was just kind of the way we came out and the way we played. And
Right.
not to say we didn't play hard or we didn't fight. It's just, we came up short, but there were things we could have done better. So it was one of those, I think that practice was just one of those learning moments for a few of our guys to make the sprints. I don't know.
I think that's well said. And
you're trying to pick them up. You're trying to challenge. You're trying to pick them up. But yeah, I mean, it was one of those that, I don't regret holding each other accountable and trying to make them understand how much we care. And I think you see that a lot today. Like, how much do you care? How much do you want to be a good team? How much do you want to be a good player? And you see it on your own teams and you see it across the board. But that was a day. That was a wild day of practice.
And I'd like to give, and you were giving me chills over here. And guys, like, when I look at the word leader in the dictionary, I see DJ Byrd's name in there because of the way he not only the way he worked and practiced. He had that platform. He was going to play harder than anybody else, but also the way he's talking about right here, the way he held his teammates accountable. And you have to do that. I see so many times today training players, talking to players about their teams, and they're just afraid to hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
And like, that is a weak man. Like, you cannot do that.
Yeah. And even saying that, not that I was the best at it either. Cause I kind of look back and like, maybe I should have done this, or I should have, cause I wasn't the best athlete on our team, or, there are times like, man, I should have said something there. Or I should have called him out, or I should have done this. So it wasn't like I had it all figured out. I was like, now that I look back, I was like, man, I should have done more. Cause then it got to, again, my senior year, we went 500 in the Big Ten, and, so there was a lot more losing than I'd been accustomed to in my first 3 years. And it was like, there would be good days and bad days of, trying to communicate with certain players and, try to be an extension of our staff. And then there were other times where it's like, man, I can't even deal with it today. And it was like, and it wasn't on all of our teammates. Like we all had some issues that year, just trying to find our way. And for us to go 500 in the Big Ten, I think, was successful for the team that we had and for our guys. And then the next year wasn't much better, but that's where, Coach Painter, he brought in a class of PJ, Dakota, and Isaac and Vince, and kind of started that from there. And so you go through those phases in teams, and you have success some years, other teams you don't. Well, why didn't you? And you try to figure that out. Like there's no other way to do it. You try to figure out what went wrong and what you can change.
And I'd like to pull a point out from exactly what you just said, and that is, I feel like you can live with failures, but you cannot live with not maximizing your potential. Like you said, with that team that went 500 in the Big Ten, we reached our potential with what we had. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can live with that. But you can't live with not trying, and you cannot live with
underachieving is, and I'll take this from Coach Gary. That's one of his biggest, like fears. Like, hey, we have a team here that can be really good if you do this. If you show this pride and you show that you are willing to do what, not if it was easy, everyone would do it. You hear that all the time. But that's very true. Everyone would do it. So like, underachieving is kind of the biggest fear for all of us. Like, you have the talent, you have the opportunity, and just because you didn't execute this play, or you didn't open up on a back screen, or you gave up an offensive rebound. Like, you see teams lose like that all the time. And not that it's completely preventable, but you want that mindset. Is like, there's no way we're losing this game because I've put in the time. We've worked as a team. I've put in these shots. Like, you want that mentality from all your guys. And it doesn't happen all the time, but that's what you're working for. That's what we're all working for, is try to have that competitiveness, that pride, that fire, I guess, just all the time. Like, it's hard to keep up, but the few that do, man, they can do it.
Absolutely. And that's why I wanted to bring up that IU practice. And I normally don't like to talk a lot in podcasts. I like for you guys to hear from our guests the whole time, but I feel like I have to say this and give you a bird's eye view from being the manager in that practice. So I'm it was like I said, it wasn't a scheduled practice, and I think there were 2 of us managers there, and I'm running the clock. DJ, I've been at a lot of basketball programs. I feel like we call those 22s, right? Down, back in 22 seconds. Okay, so
still good to this day.
So we walk into Cardinal Court, and it's like a funeral. I mean, like, there ain't nobody talking. We know what's coming. Coach Payne just looks at me and says, Delks, be ready to hit that clock over and over again. And so, like, we didn't even come together at the beginning. You know, everybody comes in, and Coach Payne's just like, everybody on the line. And I just start hitting the clock, down, back. And, I mean, for an hour. I mean, it was a long time. It felt
like a long time.
And
I don't remember how long it was, but it felt like a long time.
It was a long time. And there was this, there was a player that wasn't making the time. And to what we've been talking about, just that effort, it wasn't because he couldn't make the time.
No, like, not at all.
He was one of the best athletes I've ever been around, right? And so I remember this player not making the time, and I remember DJ just losing his mind on this player and just just getting in his face and holding him accountable to what he could become. And like I remember like coming out of my chair at the scorers table, like when DJ's just going crazy about the effort that it takes to win and the effort that's expected at Purdue basketball. And like, I'm getting chills even talking about this because of just how powerful that moment was. It's always stuck in my mind. So DJ, I just had to bring up that practice, and I hope that that story inspires you all today. And DJ, I kind of want to go back to in your background and go back in time to talk about the recruiting process for you. I got a lot of players and hoopers going through the recruiting process right now. It's tricky. It's weird. You don't know what to expect. Just kind of give us the story about your recruiting process.
Okay, yeah, it's a little bit different now. They've changed some rules on recruiting, and obviously with the transfer portal, it's like free agency at the moment. But my recruiting process was, I started getting some looks in 7th and 8th grade, and my freshman year, I played on I was fortunate to be on a pretty good AAU team. I played for Indiana Elite, and we had players. We had Jordan Holes, who played at Indiana. We had Mason Plumlee, that played at Duke and plays in the NBA. We had Ray McCallum, who played in the NBA for a little bit. Still plays overseas in China, I believe. We had Stephen Van Treese, who was a 2013 national championship with Louisville. And we had Colt Ryan, who was played at Evansville, was all-time leading scorer for a while. I think he might be still 2nd or 3rd. So we had some skilled players, and so we were able to play in some of the top tournaments and compete against some of the top players. I remember playing in North Carolina, and we played John Wall and Ryan Kelly, and we actually ended up beating them in 2 different games. Wow. And so at that point, we were like, man, we can compete with anybody. Like at the time, like, this team's good. That kid's good. That kid's going to, he's getting recruited by everybody. So for me, that's kind of when it started. But really, I had a stress fracture in my foot. But there was the tournament I realized I did this a lot more than probably I should have. I played through a lot of injuries. I was like, can it get worse? They're like, well, not really, unless you break it. But if you break it, it'll heal faster. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll just play. But we played at South Bend. And after that weekend, I ended up getting an offer from Purdue. And my first offer was actually from Xavier University. Sean Miller was there, and he'd offered me because I went to their elite camp, and I had gotten calls from Kelvin Sampson to Indiana, and they had offered me, but they had some recruiting issues they were going through at the time. Butler offered me, and Coach Shrewsbury was there, and Brad Stevens. We visited their place that year, and then Notre Dame. I was supposed to visit them and visit Iowa, but for me, I was like, when I got that Purdue offer, and I was 30 minutes away, and I'd known Coach Painter, I'd known a few of the guys and played against them anymore. For me, it was like, man, I don't think I need to go anywhere else. So the recruiting process for me was a little bit different than a lot, especially nowadays. And then I committed like my sophomore year of high school. So I committed early, especially compared to, I think, a lot of kids now. But one thing I'd say to kids now in the recruiting process is don't hold out for, something that I don't know that you're waiting on. Really, if you're getting recruited by a school and a staff, do your research with them. You might not know anything about them initially, but do some research, do your own, because it can still be a good program. And if it fits your style of play and where you want to be, it could be a great decision. I think it gets scary now because you're like, oh, I want to go D1. I don't want to go D2, or I want to go D2 and not D3, or not NAIA. But there's some really good NAIA schools, and there's some really good D2 schools. So I just think that there's a lot of that. So you really need to kind of focus on your game. Focus on what you can do, focus on getting better. And then just really do your research and don't think you're this level player or not this level player, and just try to find the best position for you. I know it's tough, but that's kind of the stage we're in right now.
Yeah, and that's all great advice. And if you're a hooper listening to this right now, I hope you can take some wisdom from that. And DJ had a really cool recruiting process starting all the way in the 7th grade and just navigated that. And I think it's I think he makes a really good point to do your research, to do your homework on other teams and other staffs. And you're as much as they're doing their homework on you, you need to do your homework on them. That's for sure. And so DJ, Coach Paint, as we know, is second to none at building toughness. And that is why you were such a highly touted player at Purdue, and why they wanted you, because you just played the game the right way. What are some drills you loved at Purdue that just bred toughness?
Okay, there's a few, and I know I think you mentioned rebound war.
Yep.
That was a tough one. There was no fouls, no out of bounds. But I was okay in that one because there's a line with the guards, and then there's a line with the bigs. So we were guard loaded at that point. So I would always go with the bigs, and I would just kind of be quicker and try to like not touch them at all and go get the rebound. But then when I did, it'd be very physical. So you just kind of learn to play through that. And I think that's one thing too. Like so many players, I think, just look for fouls. And I think this is probably my dad too, because my dad used to play one-on-one, and he would foul me all the time and just foul me until I scored it. And he's like, just score it anyway. So like I always had that mentality. It's like in pickup games, I've never called a foul in pickup games.
Right.
Like just because I'm like, okay, that's how the game that you fouled me, you didn't call it, and I'm going at the other end. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to get it back and I'm going to score it through you next time. Like that's the mentality that I had. And I think a lot of our guys get fouled, and then they're still thinking about the foul down here, and then they come down and they're thinking about the foul, and I'm like, God, if these guys just stopped thinking about the foul and played through the physicality of it, like we talked earlier, like, and just had that mentality, I think that would benefit them. It's almost like, oh, I got fouled and I don't care. I'm going to score it anyway. And so like we did a lot of drills with that, and that was kind of rebound war. Like if you got the offensive rebound, now it wouldn't, if it was a blatant foul, like it would be called, but
yeah, there wasn't many.
And when you're on the road in the Big Ten, there's a lot of many you think are blatant and they're not. So you had to kind of train that way, like you're not getting the foul. But we also did a lot of other, one-on-one stuff. Like early in the year, we would do some full court, like zigzag one-on-one, and that built toughness in terms of your wind and here. So like you would guard full court, go to the other side, guard full court, like a zigzag, turn them. And then the third trip, it would be like one-on-one when you got to half court. And so like that was, that's like a game. You're guard, and just those type of drills to prepare you for the game. And that was another good one we did. And then perfection shell is always a good one because it kept going. Because perfection shell in theory is you want to do everything perfect, be on your line, jump to the ball, good closeouts, ball screen defense, help side, box out, rebound, secure the rebound. There you go. Stop. You got one stop. then I feel like Coach Payne would just find things. So we would keep doing this drill for like 20 to 30 minutes. But no, that was a good one just in terms of focusing on each possession, each action, because that's one thing our team needs to do a better job of going from one action to the other. Because if you think about it, my guy's in the corner, right? If there's a ball screen happening on the other side, I should probably be here. I should probably be here. My guy's setting a back screen. I need to open up. Like all that stuff kind of gets, if you're not used to it. So that's why we practice so much, is trying to get our guys used to going from one action in the half court to another. Ball screen defense. Are we icing it? Are we downing it? Are we high hedging it? Like the teams that have that down and have that communication down, especially in our conference, can be really good.
No doubt. And those are some fantastic drills. And speaking of drills, you're fantastic at player development. You've owned your own company, Rimrock. You take pride in the way you develop players. I wanted to hear from you specifically about your training philosophy when it comes to player development. So you get a player, what's kind of your philosophy?
It depends on the player and kind of what their goals are, what their age is. The younger kids, we'd start with shooting drills. I mean, I love teaching guys how to shoot and you get more advanced obviously as you can. But again, like I said, I've been working with Ross Cummings here, and then Dakota Mathias has been in town. He kind of runs his own drills though. So I just help him with that. Like he's at that point where he's like, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And then he goes out and buries them. And I'm just like, that's about right. You keep doing that.
Just keep doing
But starting at a young age, I always, with our youth teams and stuff like that, I was always like, we play man-to-man all the time. Sorry, I don't. That's just my opinion. If you're in second grade, you should not be playing a 2-3 zone.
Absolutely.
Just so like that was my thing. Is young teams play man-to-man, run, jump, and that was another thing. Brad Dickey, our head coach at Franklin, always used to say, let them run, let them jump, let them be athletic, let them go get the ball, let them guard full court, let them like that. If you can do that, you can always play a zone.
Right.
You can always play a zone. But that kind of, at a young age, you want to be able to play man-to-man defense. And then in terms of skill sessions and stuff like that with a kid that age, I would, again, start with shooting, ball handling. And as you get to the older groups, I'd try to make my training a little different so you could teach real, like it wouldn't just be cones and dribbling drill type stuff. There'd be some of that. Hand-eye coordination, ball handling, finishes at the rim. But then I would try to come off like a pin down, or I would come off a flare, or I would come off a single pin down, or I'd come off a ball screen, or I'd ball screen and die, like try to get more actions that you're going to see in the game. And then I wouldn't do a ton of defensive stuff unless I was with our team. We would work on some defensive stuff, but individually, I just try to get more game actions, because I feel like you don't see a lot of that in training, like a ton of it. Mm-hmm. You see the cones, you see the finishes, you see the shooting drills, which there's always a place for, but I'd always try to add something that was kind of game oriented that they could take back with them.
Man, I couldn't agree more with that. And I agree that you see that loss today, really. There's not a lot of trainers or, thrown in the game-like situations. And I love hearing that. And if you're in Hooper, if you're training right now and all you're doing is trying to dribble 6 basketballs, like you're never going to do that in a game. But like if you're, coming off a single, then guarding, or you're trying to score off it, like that's going to happen. And so I think that's a really, really key takeaway there, DJ. And really, DJ, in closing, share with us a time in your life where you really had to compete. Like our definition of competing is doing what God is calling you to do, even when it's hard. So just share a situation where you really had to fight through adversity.
All right. There's a few different times. I'll say this one because it gave me hope, like, oh, this can happen. Like my freshman year, we were Big Ten champions. And there was about half the Big Ten games that I didn't play in. I wasn't playing at all. Mm-hmm. And I had some injuries. Like I had a stress fracture in my back, but it wasn't the reason I wasn't playing. I would just still wear a back brace. And again, I'd just play. So I don't know if you remember that my freshman year would have been, Juwan and Etuan would have been juniors.
Yep.
That was after the Rob situation, which we don't talk about.
Yeah.
And then we went to the tournament and we had a bad showing in the tournament game versus Minnesota. I think we had 11 points at halftime.
Yes.
In Minnesota,
Yep.
they were up by a good amount. And again, I hadn't been playing. So I got in with like 10 minutes to go as a freshman, and I had my back brace on. And I was just like, I've still been practicing. I've still been doing this, and I haven't played, but I've kind of kept at it. And looking back, I had like 11 points in like 5 minutes just because I caught it and shot it. And I was like, well, I had nothing to lose, man. I just came out and we were down, and I took the open shots, did everything I'd been practicing. And I had a good showing in that game. So we went to the NCAA tournament. We beat Siena and then Texas A&M.
Yep.
Texas A&M, I had like 10 points because I
Yep.
got more playing time from my showing in the Big Ten tournament.
Remember that? Yep.
So that one there, it's just like I'd been battling through some injuries, but at the same time I wasn't playing, and but your team's winning. So you like a lot of players get down and they come on the court late in the game and like, I shouldn't be in here late in the game. I was like, that's the opposite. You do the most with the time that you get.
Right.
Like, who are you to say what you deserve? Like, you show that in practice every day. The coaches haven't been doing this for 20 years just to sit you on the bench because they don't like you. Like, that's not what it's about. Like, you earn that every single day. And we had some injuries. We were down some points, and I got to go into the game and made some shots. And then I get an opportunity to play against Texas A&M. Chris Kramer wins it with a layup in overtime.
Yep.
Like, those are exciting moments, but I wasn't upset with my playing time. I took advantage of the time that I got. So that's one of the stories where I had a lot going on and wasn't playing much, but was still able to come in and be productive.
Absolutely. And listener, I hope you can really pull a lot of takeaways from this podcast and listen to DJ today. And man, I can't wait to go back and re-listen to this, and really, man, what a player and a coach that really defines what it means to be tough. And I love hearing about how he's just the mindset he approaches the game as a player, but now as a coach. And that translates to life. Kind of like we talked about earlier, like you can tell a lot about about a person by the way they approach the game, by the way they play the game of basketball. And it's so cool to see DJ successful and down at Mercer now. But like, I love hearing the life lessons he's learning, and just like the story he just told about fighting through adversity and like getting put in at the end of the game. Like some players, today would say, those are scrub minutes. I'm not going to play hard, whatever. And who are you to say that and determine that? And, no matter what opportunity you get, you got to compete. You got to play hard. And like, you never know what that you can do with that opportunity. And we can take, if you're listening to this right now, you can, wherever you're at in life this week, like with the opportunities you're given this week, you better take advantage of it. You better compete. You better play hard. You better give it all you got, because you never know what could happen from it. So thank you, Compete Training Academy listener, for joining us today. DJ, thanks for joining us on the podcast. Always remember that competing is doing what God is calling you to do, even when it's hard.